Okay, sorry I'm late. It's having technical issues, but happy to be back. So, we're back at the Tau. Where I left off was after we did the base coat, we did the first highlight. So now we're going to go back in and we're going to do the final airbrush highlight. And then from there, we get into the really fun stuff, which is painting all that black with a brush. And when I say fun, I mean fun. But this will be the extent of the airbrush work on these. If I was going to do OSL, then obviously I'd do that with an airbrush as well. But because I don't think the ion cannons really need it, we're just going to, I think, keep them pretty standard as far as OSL goes. I'm not a big OSL guy. I don't usually like doing, like, I don't do OSL just for the sake of doing OSL. Like, oh, they're Tau, they have to have OSL. That's not really my style. So we've gone through the medium gray, German gray uniform. I've waxed poetic about how much I love this color for the base coat on the gray, and then we did some rust gray for the first highlights, and that brought us here. We're starting to look pretty good, and then now we're gonna go in. Get that out of the way there. Now we're gonna go in with Fenrisian gray. And we're going to use the Fenrisian gray, Fenrisian, however you want to pronounce that. We're going to go in with the Fenrisian gray, and we're going to do the final. And this is, as you can see, that's a really light gray, which is good, because that's really gonna make those shapes pop. And what we want a lot of contrast because it's Tau and it just lends itself to that. But we really want to exaggerate those, because when we go at the end and we do the oil wash, it's going to tone some of that down. And so we want to make sure that we overcorrect on the front end so that when we do the oil wash, it doesn't just wipe out the highlight and wipe out all this work that we've done. So let's start in with the helmets. Hopefully this color doesn't give us too much trouble either. You see just a little bit on the front there, and it's really, like, you can see it's really exaggerated. That looks, in this light, it looks almost white. That's better. That's a better representation there. And we're just doing the front. We're just doing the front there. It is a really, really light blue-gray, and when you're applying it, it does look very, very white. Maybe not pure white, like it does right there, But you can see, like, once it's dried on the side of that helmet there, once it's dried, it's just that really nice blue gray, and we've got some really nice transitions from the dark shadow gray, German gray, all the way up to the final Fenrisian gray. And there we have some helmets. And maybe tonight I won't sit through the pain of undercoating the main body. Maybe after we get through this highlight, I'll go in and I'll just start working on the helmets, and maybe we can do some metallics, some edge highlighting, and the lenses, and we'll see if we can do all that. Let's see if we can do all that in one sitting tonight. I hope so. When I'm batch painting like this, so I'm painting 4 of these guys at a time, so that's 4 heads, 4 bodies, and 8 weapons. What I'll typically do is I'll like finish off the heads and then be done with them up to the point where they need the oil wash. I'll just oil wash everything all at once. But I'll finish off the 4 heads, be done with them, and then maybe either the bodies or the guns, finish off the guns, be done with them, and then finish off the bodies. That way I get that sense of accomplishment kind of as I'm going, where I can see progress, I'm making progress. On the toes, you really want to keep it to kind of the bottom half on that top toe section. You don't want to end up with just like super white gray toes, because that's going to look strange. But you do want to acknowledge that there's more light hitting down there, and that is looking pretty good. You see, we're really getting those knees accentuated. We're going to hit the top of the little almost crotch area there, and then just like we did with the mid-tone, we're going to spray almost straight down on top. And we're going to try to stay to the outside. And if you don't, while we want a nice strong highlight, we don't want to necessarily overdo it on this one, because then we'll get too big of a departure from the dark gray. If we overdo it on this step, it's going to look awkward, because we're going to obliterate that mid-tone, and it's just going to go from like a really dark gray to like an almost white gray. So we want to make sure that we're maintaining that mid-tone. We don't want to lose it altogether. So that's looking pretty good. Up at the top of the vent there, and then top of the shoulder pad, the little corner, and this we just want to do that corner there. We're not going to do the whole front part. We just want to hit that corner, and then kind of the same up here. Maybe a third of the way down, we want to hit that, because remember that transition from the dark orange to the yellow to that really rich yellow is about 2/3 of the way back on here. So we really want to only go about a third of the way, because the yellow doesn't have this highlight. The yellow doesn't have that sharp of a highlight. So if we go all the way back through the mid, then it's just gonna look a little awkward. So we're trying to avoid that. We're trying to avoid awkward. Some of us are more successful than others. So just hit that corner, and again, about a third of the way back on that top of the pad there. I'm not worried about this Tau Sept symbol because we're going to paint that in brass. So, and then a little bit on the butt plate. Don't forget about the calf armor. I always forget about the calf armor. And then I have to end up either... I never remember in time to airbrush it. I always end up having to paint it by hand. And it's just a bummer whenever that happens. So, a little bit underneath there just to define that. And then that little spot back there. That little spot, it may seem like really inconsequential, but it really helps end the model because it is extending a little far out, but it does help end the model. So that is looking pretty sharp. I like that. I love this scheme. What can I say? Which is good because I've painted, boy, I don't even know, 4,000 points of this army maybe? Probably, something like that. I painted maybe the first time around was maybe 2,400 points. And then we added like 3 riptides, 6 broadsides, 2 of the Forgeworld riptides, and another like 30 drones, and a couple of ethereals, and then a dozen crisis suits, Pathfinder team, these guys, and I think that pretty much catches us up. So we're looking at a good sized army that I've painted in this scheme, and I just love this scheme. If I ever did Tau, which will literally never happen, I would do this scheme. I would shamelessly rip off Brian's army that I painted, and I would do this scheme. I love it that much. Butt plate, corner, calf armor. Got like Jean-Claude Van Damme calves. Bada bing. That looks good. All right. Yeah, I don't know if I have the heart to do all the black on that undersuit tonight. Streaming is more tiring than I thought it would be. Just talking for, this will be like 5 hours by the time we're done with this tonight. But it's been great so far. It's been fun. Turns out I like explaining stuff, so then this is perfect for me. And again, once we established, yeah, but you know, it's a new venture, so I'm enthusiastic. I'll probably only be doubling down like 1 day a week, because the evenings are, you know, when my wife and I spend time together. So we usually just hang out. I paint. She does her crafting and whatnot. We listen to podcasts. So you know, we spend that time together, or you know, but whatever other people do. But her desk is right behind. You can kind of see it in the background. Her crafting desk is right behind this one. So she'd have to sit there and listen to me talk about painting for 2.5 hours. And while she is extraordinarily supportive, I'm not quite sure that's how she'd prefer to spend her evening. So she's, doing her thing, and we'll reconnect when the streaming's over. But I don't anticipate doing 2 streams a day all the time. But it's good. I mean, I used to work in the restaurant industry for a long time, so I'm used to chatting for long periods of time. But I'll also be putting these on YouTube, because I know, because I'm painting full time, so the best time for me to stream is in the afternoon, because my wife's working and I'm, working, doing painting. So the best time for me to stream is in the afternoon, but it's it's convenient for people like in the EU. It's convenient for people, in other parts of the world. But if you're at a job where you can't watch Twitch, it's inconvenient for people in the United States when I start streaming at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I know a lot of people I've been contacted by a few people that say, hey, either I'm not really big on Twitch, or I don't watch a lot of Twitch, or I'll have a real job, or whatever it might be. Not a real job, but I have a 9-to-5 job. But they want to see the content. So Twitch archives this for 14 days, I think. So let me pop out the chat here. Let's see if we make that bigger. Aha! Man, we are learning things today. This is excellent. Most people only stream 2 to 3 days. Psh, amateurs. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I can sustain. I don't know what is going to work for people. But for me, I mean, I'm sitting here painting anyway. This is what I'm going to be doing in the afternoons anyway. The mornings I'm planning on, doing prep or doing some tedious stuff, or I'll be filming tutorials. More to FYD. Came across you listening to the podcast. Cool. Hey, thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny when I'll run into somebody that I recognize from a podcast, or I'll see them somewhere, or and they just look. You're like, oh, okay. And then there's my friend Brian from Splintermind podcast, and he looks exactly how you would expect his voice to look. But Brian's a good friend. But thank you for the support. Your teacher and get to watch when it fits your schedule. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, the thing that I want to do, I want to be able to provide content to the widest group of people possible, because it really is it's a global hobby. It's a global community. And I have, one of my good kind of painting guru guys that I go to for advice and feedback. I mean, he's Greek, my friend Prometheus. So it, just streaming at different times of the day gives me an opportunity to interact and provide content for people, all over the world, and which I think is pretty cool. And if it, creates, and I'll, put it on YouTube for people who can't catch it or don't have Twitch or don't want to have Twitch. So, so we'll see. I like it so far. Turns out I like explaining stuff and talking about painting. I talk about painting a lot of my day without doing Twitch, so it's kind of a natural extension at this point. With these highlights, you can see these are pretty extreme towards the front of the gun, but that's because let me empty this out first, and then we get to peel off some masking, which is like, I mean, really, it's like one of the best parts of the hobby. When it doesn't betray you. But I'm not anticipating that. This is pretty straightforward. One of the things that I forgot to do, and of course now I remember, 8 hours later. One of the things I usually do if I'm masking off an area with tape is Battle Host, yeah, Mark and Matt, good friends of mine, and those were a lot of fun to do. Awesome. I'm glad. We got a lot of really positive feedback about those episodes, about the airbrushing. I've been thinking about doing something similar, just in video form for the Patreon and for YouTube. So I haven't come up with kind of a curriculum or anything yet, but it's in the works right now. Just trying to bang out the tutorials. But that's awesome. I'm glad that those were helpful. What was I saying about masking? Oh yeah. Usually if I'm going to use tape to mask off an area, I'll gloss varnish it first. And it just provides less surface tension and it's just smoother at a basic level. So there's less for the tape to grab onto. Because the idea of pulling up paint just terrifies me because it's just so heartbreaking. But I didn't do it this time. So we're just going to pray. Oh, I'll finish my thought. I'm a little scatterbrained, but the reason these highlights are so extreme, you can see, like, we go really from the dark gray over here up to that really, really light gray, and especially like on the back there. That's a pretty stark highlight, but it's because when these are mounted on the arm, this is always just something you want to keep in mind, when you're painting. When they're mounted on the arm, you can see that the light, like if the light's coming from, say, there, you can see that the light falls in front of that shoulder pad. So it's going to hit the pad there, it's going to hit the arm there, and it's going to hit here. And everything kind of behind that is going to be in shadow of the pad. So when you're painting sub-assemblies, it's always important to keep in mind where that sub-assembly goes on the model and how the lighting on the model is going to affect that, so that when you do put it together, that, like, if we had run, it'd be tempting to run this highlight like all the way along this ridge here and like all the way back on the top of the hand, and get like, if this were just an independent piece just sitting there, that's probably where I would put those highlights. But keeping in mind how it's positioned on the model is going to influence that light. So it's just something you always want to keep. It's something you always want to keep in mind when you're painting at sub-assemblies is where is that going to fit on the model, and how is that going to affect the lighting. Here we go. So now I get these very sharp, pointy little tweezers. The bent. I use these for a lot of different things, for peeling, masking, or I'll use them for doing base tufts and stuff. They're really good for tuft work. It's a tuft job, but somebody has to do it. I've got dad jokes. So, yeah. God, I love that. That's a great feeling. Nice and slow. We don't want to, as enthusiastic as we are, we do not want to just yank these things off. Is that a hole in the resin, or is that a piece of black? That is a hole in the resin. Okay. So there's a little hole in the resin there. There's nothing I can do about that. If I had caught it before we painted it, I could have filled it with putty or something, but there's nothing I can do about it at this point. So now that we have that kind of peeled off, you can see that nice transition on that yellow. But you can see how it also matches. It also matches that gray on the side. I don't know what's going on with the. There we go. So you can see that gray transition and that orange, brown to yellow transition are both occurring in the same place, and so it looks really natural. It looks like it should, if the light were falling, how you're painting the light falling. So that direct light really washes out that yellow, but you can see that. So that is looking really, really good. I like where we have the yellow. And different, different suits. I did more or less yellow. Kind of the fancier the suit, the fancier I got with the yellow. Like the crisis suits are pretty standard. They're like all gray except for the shoulder pad and the helmet are yellow. And then all the way up to like the riptides where I was masking off a bunch of different areas and really, really going to town with. Ooh, come on. There we go. Beautiful. Yeah, we're having a little. Hang on a second. We're having a little color saturation problem again. One day. One of the goals over time, one of the goals is to get, let's see what happens if we saturate this a little more. One of the goals is to get set up for like 4K and get right now I'm using a Logitech webcam, which is good. I'm really impressed with how easy it is to use and how easy it was to set up, and but I'd like to upgrade to a full 4K setup, maybe something with I can put on a tripod next to me so this thing isn't between me and the computer. That would be nice, but we're only on day 3, so it's good to have goals. So like and share, tell your friends. But yeah, the goal one day is to hopefully in the not too distant future to upgrade and get. I have a couple friends that do streaming, and so I'll be reaching out to them to see what a good setup is and what a good camera is and everything. So that is looking pretty good. Now you can see here. I don't know if you can see that well, but you can see it's not super crisp right there. There's a little bit of fuzz right there where it's not just a real crisp line. That's okay. It's okay. It's not ideal, but the edge highlight will take care of that. It'll cover that, so we're not going to beat ourselves up too much about that. And get that piece. And if a corner isn't coming up for you, try one of the other corners. Don't tempt it, because I'll get in there and just get stubborn and try and get that. And like, oh, why isn't this corner coming up? Then I'll scrape the paint, and that's the last thing I want. But look at that. That is awesome. So that turned out really well. I'm really happy that was very successful. Masking. I mean, that's a pretty low bar to climb when it comes to masking. Just doing little strips like that, but it's always a little nerve-wracking. So now we have the 4 bodies. Airbrush work is done, and we are moving on. And you saw each step just gets a little faster and a little faster. The longest, I'd say as far as time, the step that takes the longest is brush painting and blocking in everything black. That takes the most time, like by far. See, this is like super desaturated. That's okay. No, that's pretty close. So we're gonna get 2 of these. We're gonna get 2 of these weapon arms unwrapped, and then we can hold them up on the model and see how doing the ends of those guns in yellow ended up balancing out the yellow detailing on the suits, because we didn't do any yellow on the legs or anything like that. But we want to make sure that we have kind of a balanced composition. Now, I love Forgeworld. I love Forgeworld models. I'm a big fan. But these are an old model. These are an old sculpt. These are not the best design. I mean, they're designed okay, but the molds are just tired, so they required a lot of work up front. So that's what we're looking at, basically. And once the black gets put in, it'll just define this even more. It'll give it a nice neutral background for everything. But overall, I really like how that balanced out. That's really nice. So there's going to be a really good focus right here on the front of the model. When you're playing them, and they're, hopefully most of the time facing away from you, it's going to look really nice with that yellow. And it's because really we've created this triangle here of visual interest between these 3 pieces, and then that's repeated. That's repeated up here. And that's kind of fundamental to, like classic artistic composition and stuff. I studied a lot of art history in college. It's fascinating, one of my favorite subjects. But so I don't get too deep into classical theory or anything like that. But there are some fundamental kind of concepts that can really help when trying to figure out where to put blocks of color and where to put different elements. It has a lot more to do with like sculpting and proportions and stuff like that, which hats off to those guys. That's insane talent. I can't really draw very well, and I haven't tried my hand at sculpting ever, really. That's one of the areas I really want to improve in, is doing like green stuff work and working with milliput and stuff like that to really add unique elements to models. But it's on my list of things to do. Also want to get kind of a wider repertoire with oil paints. Right now I use them a lot. I use them pretty much only for washes, pin washing, and a little bit of weathering. But I really want to incorporate oils more. I just love the texture that they get and the kind of grittiness of the paint. I think it's really cool. Really cool work being done. So it's always one of the things I love about this is there's always going to be something else to learn. There's always going to be another technique or a new product, or I know MIG and MIG Ammo, they've been releasing some really cool enamel products and some really cool oils and different acrylic paints, and AK Interactive, same thing. So it's definitely plenty of content out there if I want to go that route. So this, not sponsored by anybody, but this is a wet palette from Redgrass Games, and it is so cool. I really like it. I've never really taken to having a wet palette, just in general. It's not really been a big part of my arsenal in the past. But ever since I got this, it's been really, really useful. There you go. And I've really gotten used to it. I like that it seals. It has a really good seal on it, so it seals overnight. And again, this isn't a paid plug. This is just me advocating for a product that I like. So right now we're going to go in and we're going to start painting some black. So we'll start in on the helmets because they're small and they're easy and they will give me a sense of completion in my life. And we're going to go in and we're just going to paint, like a lot of this area is pretty much black from when we did, because we weren't really painting the front. But we are gonna paint over that, carry it around, We want to make sure to get this little neck bubble thing, because this thing always sticks out a little bit further than I think it will. And if I skip it, or if I forget about it, and I glue the head onto the model, then I'll see it, you know, and then I'm like, God, that would have been so easy to do. So just make sure, just to go over it while I'm there. And we're not overly concerned. We're not overly concerned about hitting the inside of the head. I don't know if you can see in there very well. You can see it a little better on this. This is still dark gray on the inside of the visor. If you hit it, you hit it. If you don't, you don't. It's not ever gonna come up, really. You can leave it. Try and leave it. Don't just get crazy with it. No need to thin the paint using that wet palette. So the wet palette will draw moisture up through the paper and thin the paint. But when I rinsed out my brush, so I rinsed out my brush and I just rinsed a little bit of water off on the paper towel, and then the rest of the water I put on the wet palette. So there's some water in there with the paint. So like here you can see that black is pretty thin, but up here in the top is still just paint, as pretty much as it came out of the pot, but it's drawing that moisture out of the paper and it thins it. So some of it is done just through the wicking, and then some of it is because I put some water onto the palette when I rinsed out my brush to kind of speed things along. And if I stay at the edges of the paint on the palette, that's where it's going to be the most diluted. But if I want, one of the things I like about this is if I want if I want a little bit thicker paint, I can always just go to the back. I can go up here and grab some of the paint it's not necessarily like sitting right on the paper, so it's going to be a little thicker. Good question though. On the back, and the back. See, I almost forgot. I spent a lot of time talking about the little neck bubbles, and I almost forgot one. And boom. And tempted to leave that little disc at the bottom there gray, but we're just gonna paint black because we really didn't pay any attention to it. It's just kind of like residual highlighting from when we were doing the airbrushing on the helmets. So, and we really want the focus to be on those panels, on the actual panels for the. Now here's kind of like decision time with this helmet here. Let's see if I can. Do I want to try and get in there? And you can see the brush I'm using to do this black base coat is like trashed. This is like my base coat metallic kind of brush. If I want to do more detail work, I'll grab a different brush. But for doing stuff like this, I use a little bit worn out brush. My brush is kind of going a progression from detail brush to kind of base coat brush. So you can see like it's not bad, but it's not great either. That's pretty good. And for pretty much everything, I use a Citadel medium layer. It's about a size 1, but for $8, pretty good brush. And I blow through them pretty quick, but I also paint a lot. So, for me, it's a good value for the quality of the brush. When I really, really need to get something precise done, or if I'm nervous about doing something, then I'll break out the Winsor & Newton's Series 7. I've heard great things about Artist Opus, and been wanting to give those a try, so I'll have to pick some of those up at some point. So we have the helmets undercoated. Let's just keep going with the black, and then we'll see where. So on the feet, I usually start, for whatever reason, whenever I'm painting a model, I usually start whatever step, whether it be base coating or edge highlighting. I always start at the left foot. I don't know what it is. I kind of work my way around, but this is going to be black. This is going to be black. We want to leave that calf armor alone. Kind of get in there. And then we want to leave this little square here. I really want to leave that alone. I don't want to get roped into painting that black. One, because I like the way it looks as part of the foot. And two, because if I get roped into painting like the back part of this black over here, then I have to get down in here between the toes and over in here between the toes. And that is an opportunity for me to mess up that airbrushing for really not a lot of benefit to how the model's going to look. Hey, what's happening? Welcome. It's really not gonna. It's a risk versus reward proposition for painting that foot. This back part of the foot here for painting that black, and the reward is not nearly great enough. It's just not going to add much to the model, I don't think, to have that be black. So rather than risk whacking one of those toes with black paint, which would necessitate probably repainting it, I'm just going to be careful around that little kind of ball joint there, and then call that good. And then we want to get in behind here, in between those. So these parts that are part of what we're doing now is we're blacking out the undersuit, and that will serve to really accentuate and delineate those armor panels. And it's a little shocking when after I finish this step and I kind of take a step back and I look at the model, and we'll do a little side by side, how much of a difference this makes. I think it's one of the things that really sets apart a Tau paint job, is going in and doing this step. In this, get a wet brush in there real quick and kind of rub it around. I don't know if you could see. Be better if I could hold it in focus. On the inside of the thigh there, I got a little black, and I washed off my brush. I got a little water in it, and now I'm kind of agitating on the panel where I got the black paint. Because I'm working with thin paint and because I got on that pretty quick, it just ended up, I just wiped that away, and it's like it never happened. So that's going to happen. I'm going to, my brush control is pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. I give myself a little bit less of a hard time when I'm using a brush like this that is really designed for base coating. This is not the world's most precise paintbrush, but I don't want to use a nice brush when I'm shoving it into cracks and corners, and this would really be a lot of wear and tear on a brush that still had a really nice belly and a really nice tip. This would be a lot of wear and tear on that, which I do not want to do. So, and it also extends the life of my paintbrushes. They just go into a new stage of life, a new stage of usefulness. So they're not put out to pasture just yet. There's a long way to go before they get put out to pasture. I mean, they have to make it through. Gosh darn it. Let's just see if I can move this back a little bit. So there we go. That's better. That's a little more comfortable. Really need to get one of those paint holders so my thumb can stop being in the way of this, but it's on the list probably this week. Anyway, the brush has to go through like useful, very pointy, good tip, good belly, through base coat brush, and then dry brush, or like texture brush, and then dry brush, and then it goes into like I'm going to use this brush for doing snow on basing level of brush, or like weathering pigment brush. So, hey, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm really excited about the content that I'm going to be making for Patreon. It's similar, but it's a little more concise, a little less rambly. But it's also, that's what that platform's for. It's a little bit more, I wouldn't even say polished. I think that's giving myself too much credit. I would just say less rambly and more concise. But it's going to be similar similar techniques, similar. Oops, I almost forgot the inside of his thigh there. That would have been tragic. I can count on me forgetting or just missing, entire panels. It doesn't matter how precise I try to be, how, formulaic, working my way around, finishing off the lower half. I'll usually try and finish off base coating the lower half of the model before I move on to the upper half and make my way around from left to right and kind of go through the same processes each time. I'll miss something. I think it's human nature. So thankfully it's rarely something catastrophic. I can usually just go back but it's still frustrating. Like I remember I painted like 2000, like a 2,500 point Horus Heresy Blood Angels army, and forgot a grenade on somebody's stomach or on somebody's belt, and was just like, yeah. You got to go back through. Thanks. You got to go back through and remember, okay, well, where, what colors was I using for the grenades, and what was I doing for this, and so I try really hard to be formulaic and be methodical about it, but I'm gonna miss stuff. it's gonna happen. So I don't think I really want to get back. I really don't want to get back in that underneath that pad with this brush. Yeah, that's better. I really don't want to get back in the pad under there. I don't think it's really necessary. Oil wash is going to take care of a lot of that. Again, I don't think it really adds. I think it's fine for that to be the armor color. So we're just gonna do this little arm bit here, and then move on. So then we want to remember when we get back to the gun, we're gonna want to remember to do this kind of circular part here, also in black, to tie those two. Thanks so much. Appreciate the support. Really, really appreciate it. That's cool. Thank you. So we just have to remember to come back when we're doing the guns and paint that circular area. This part here is going to be metallic. It's going to be that brass color, so that's fine. But on the back and everything, just to integrate the two pieces into each other, so there's not like a really hard line between, like, wait, half of this armature is light gray and half of this armature is black. And if there isn't really a natural break or a natural reason for that to happen, it's just going to look off, and you're going to notice it. And you know, I don't really care how much you like weapon armatures. That's not really a part of the model we want to draw attention to. We want to draw attention to, you know, right in here, upper torso. And one of the great ways to excuse me, one of the great ways to do that with Tau is to paint these vents behind their head black, because then when we put that helmet in there, we have a really nice frame. We have a really nice frame for that helmet, especially if the helmet is another color. If you go on my Instagram, which is Legalized Mischief, or you go on my Facebook page, Legalized Mischief Productions, there are pictures on there of all the Tau that I've painted up to this point, and especially like the Yavara and Arvarna battle suits are just killer. I love those models. Yeah, really proud of the paint job I did on those models, and you can see really kind of the same approach and the same theory that we're using on these hazard suits, just scaled up to Riptide size battle suits. You know, it really is a shame that I dislike Tau gameplay wise as much as I do, because I sure do love painting these guys. But so you can see, like, that's really going to be a nice background for the head. And like the coolest part, let me see, I'll grab a Pathfinder real quick, or so one of the things I really like, so we have this like Pathfinder here. You can see that gray, like these guys go really well together. That gives you a good idea of the size of these suits too. These things are, these are 60 millimeter bases. These things are pretty burly. And then the Crisis suit, one of the things I really like is I do these turquoise lenses in turquoise. Like the OSL is turquoise, but there isn't a ton of it. But those turquoise lenses just like it really just jumps out from the models. And so even though we're framing it, even though the helmet's going to be gray, that turquoise lens is really going to be framed nicely. But yeah, I love the aesthetic. I just get bored to death playing against Tau. I think part of my aversion is I love playing melee armies. My I ran Bash Brothers for a while, long time actually. I'm running like a Monster Mash Chaos list right now. Even when I was playing AdMac at the end of 7th and the beginning of 8th, I had like a lot of Dragoons and a lot of Priests, and I just really like the combat phase. I think it's a lot of fun, and playing Chaos, what's more fun than just running up and, smashing people in the face with a chain axe? So, and Tao's, whole purpose in life is to not get into the combat phase ever. So, it's a tough matchup. But God, I love these models. I mean, these are just a dream to paint. Tao's going to be your first army and grew up watching Mac cartoons in the 80s and 90s. So they have this. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not saying Tau aren't cool. Tau are really, really cool. These are, for sure it'll be fun. And the thing about Tau is really, people focus a lot on like, how can I shoot as how do I shoot as efficiently or as well as I can, or how do I shoot as much as I can? But the key to playing Tau well is their movement and moving it around. And yeah, it's kind of a castle army, but they do have good movement. A lot of their units have fly, which makes them really flexible. So you really want to pay attention to not just, shooting everything off the board, which is good, which you want to do if you're playing Tau. You really want to be mindful of the movement phase as well, and focus a lot of attention there, because that's really where Tau can separate. Instead of just sitting there and waiting for somebody to come get them, they can really dictate a lot of the game and be a lot. And it's more. I think it's more fun to play that way when you're moving around. And we've all played against the Tau castle that just sits there. And really, I don't think it's fun. I don't even think the Tau player is having fun at that point. Just rolling dice. So. But yeah, Tau, I don't begrudge people playing Tau necessarily. It's just not my jam. But yeah, there's not a lot of mortal wound out that, but force a lot of saves. So that's me. I mean, I'm like the complete opposite side of the spectrum. I'm working on. So personally, I'm kind of burning out on the Monster Mash with Chaos. Unfortunately, see, that's starting to look pretty legit with the blacked in like that. That's a pretty good start. And then once we get the metallics in, we're really going to start to see that come together. I'm kind of burning out on the Monster Mash, and my list is basically 4 big: Magnus, Morty, Scarbrand, Bloodthirster, and Plague Bearers. So, which is fun, don't get me wrong, but I really my next kind of fun thing. I'd love to do Chaos Knights. I think those models are incredible. But I want to put. I'm converting up some Berserkers using Primaris Intercessor bodies and the Forgeworld conversion kits for Berserkers because I really just can't stand. I mean, the 30-year-old plastic models just don't hold up. Green Army, no cost involved. What would it be? Ooh, that's a good question. Next, let me think about that. But the next kind of unit that I want to put into my army is I'm converting up 20 of those Berserkers with the Intercessor bodies and putting them in Terrax pattern assault drills because they let you disembark after they arrive. So basically, they all show up. These 2 drills pop out of the ground, turn 2, turn 3, and like 20 guys with chain axes just jump out and go running and screaming and hitting people, which just sounds hilarious. So if I could do an army with no cost involved, I would probably do an Imperial Guard army with Solar Auxilia models. That's probably what I would do. Those Solar Auxilia models are unbelievably. I think they're so underrated as far as the sculpt goes. You know what else would be cool? That's a tough question. Yeah, Krieg. Krieg are cool. I like the solar. I like the solar tanks more. I like the Dracosan. I love the little Carnodon one that they just put out, and their little transport is just super super cool. And like the Basilisk and Medusa. Really, I mean, they're just such great sculpts. What else would be cool would be to do guard, but just using all the troops from Victoria Minis and doing like Brilliant Beast Guard or doing like the Highlander Moss Guard or just something really unique and cool. Using Victoria Minis Guard and I mean her company just makes incredible like tanks and artillery pieces now. You could go all out, but it's like I think it's $50 per 10 models plus shipping from Australia. And I don't know what the minimum for free shipping is, but it's probably pretty high, and you'd have to hit that on every order. But 50 per 10 is pretty prohibitive to think about doing a whole army like that. So from GW, probably Solar Auxilia, because those are, and I'm obsessed with their super heavy, the Stormhammer. Super heavy, Stormhammer, just like that rolling battleship with all the guns, and it's not bad in game. It's pretty decent, I think, but I just love that aesthetic with like the piping and everything around all the armor panels. I just think it's an incredible aesthetic. It's really a pity. I mean, I liked Horus Heresy. I liked, when I was playing 7th edition, I liked 7th edition. But I've played a couple games of Horus Heresy since 8th edition has come out, and at least at the very beginning. And man, I just can't do it. I moved to Boise, Idaho from California, and I'm very happy that I did. But you know, there are fewer people in Idaho than there are in, you know, the city I moved from. So there isn't a super strong 30K community here. But even if there were, it would be tough to play 7th edition again. Have you ever seen Creed with Dark Eldar Scourge heads? Yeah, I saw. There's that guy. I follow that guy on Instagram who does the. God, what does he call them? The crows, or yeah, something. Yeah, that guy. Just that army is like, it's one of the coolest armies. I'm interested to see what he's gonna do with the Corvus Cabal from Warcry, and see if he integrates some of those models into that army. That army is super cool. I love, and he has like those. I think he did those like the guys with the long stilt legs, like from the Mad Max. It kind of looked like they were from the Mad Max movie with the what used to be the green place that's now just this cesspool. I think he did some models along those lines, but yeah, that army is amazing. I hope he uses those Warcry models for something, because I love seeing that guy's work. I mean, every time he posts, I'm like, God, this guy. Like, I wish I had more time. You know, I have ideas for. I have a little notebook. I have like one notebook that I keep. I write down all my paint recipes in, and these are because my memory sucks, and I want to be able to go back, you know, a year later and add something to an army. So I have one recipe that I put one book that I put paint recipes in, and then I have one book that's just all kind of display board ideas or little like Rogue Trader warband ideas, and so if I'm looking around or I think of something and I'm near the notebook, I'll write it down, and it's just there to kind of, you know, keep track of some ideas and see one day maybe things will percolate up. I had an idea for a Gene Stealer cult army that I might actually still do that one because that one was a pretty good idea. I wanted to do a Gene Stealer. So my friend Michael, who is a teammate of mine and a friend who I game with regularly, he has a Gene Stealer themed Imperial army. So like his Trajan has like a Gene Stealer cult head and is like blue. His Castellan had, you know, Tyranid plates on its legs and stuff. So he has a Gene Stealer themed Imperial army, and which is pretty cool. Kind of and he did this all pre Gene Stealer cult, but or official Gene Stealer cult release. So I kind of got the idea, like, what if I turned that on its head? What if I did an Imperial cult, but played as Gene Stealer cults, and using kind of Gene Stealer cult base models, but then completely converted them and modeled them to be like this really backwater world, forgotten, very very kind of Mad Max aesthetic Imperial cult, and just go with that vibe, and see how far I can push it and do a really like washed out drab paint scheme. And I always thought that would be pretty cool. I sold off a bunch of the like kind of unbuilt kits, but I still have. Go to the death off here. Cool. So I still have like this would be like the Acolyte Icon Ward is converted to be kind of carrying an Imperial standard, which is from I think the Akalon Custodian kit, and they're still mutated because they're out in the desert and just kind of fending for themselves. And the idea is that they have this idea about the Emperor and what the Imperium is, but none of them have really interacted with the Imperium for 10, 20 generations. So kind of like how ancient mythology gets diffused and becomes a shadow of what it was, or kind of a different understanding of what that mythology was. Kind of the mythology of the Imperium gets twisted over time to where like these are like really scary bad dudes, and instead of like Gene Stealer heads, they're all gonna have like bone masks on the aberrants and acolytes and stuff to hide their kind of grotesque features, but they still have like this chitinous growth to protect from the sun. And there's a whole thing, and then using different vehicles and kits to use as Gene Stealer cults vehicles. And so we'll see. It may still come to fruition. I have a ton of neophyte hybrids that have Victorian minis heads on them. I've taken all the Tyranid iconography off, so I can use them for anything. Chaos cultists, neophyte hybrids, Imperial Guardsmen. So we'll see. It's a cool idea. It's one that I have some ideas for converting some knights and stuff like that. So that might be a project for next year. I've been playing Chaos for a couple years now, and it's just getting a little kind of restrictive and just a little. I'm just looking for a new style, looking for a new flavor. But it's hard when really the only army I have established that's fully painted is my Chaos army. So if I wanted to play something else, to try to play fully painted as much as possible, unless I'm working on something new or I'm trying something out. I usually play fully painted. So it's hard to start from scratch and have that goal of playing fully painted. But like anything else, it's a process. It's progression. One of my hopes for doing Patreon and doing Twitch streaming and all that is eventually to get more selective on commission work, more kind of choosing my spots, choosing my projects, and then kind of freeing up more time to do more personal projects. That'll also create, we'll still be creating content, of course, and just really going outside the box and trying different things and experimenting with different themes and materials. So we'll see. I got plans, but oh my gosh, that was scary. Hey, thanks. Have a great night. thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you later this week, next week, Facebook channel. So if you're watching closely, what happened was I hit that yellow with the black, and just licked my finger and rubbed it off real quick. It's really the best. If it's on a flat surface out in the open like that, just a quick lick and just rub it off is the fastest and most effective way to fix that. Especially like black on yellow is obviously especially terrifying because it's black paint on yellow paint. But so then we see side by side here. You can see on the left versus on the right, we're really getting a lot more, definition on those shapes and on the suit itself, and it's really starting to come together. So we're going to keep plodding along here with this black undercoat. So we have come on. There we go. Do we want to keep going with the black, or do we want to switch it up? What do we want to do? Yeah. Yeah, we'll keep going. Yeah, we'll switch it up. Sorry, I'm being a little indecisive, but we will stay disciplined and keep going on the black undersuit. Because we really, once we start to deviate from the plan, is when we really start to get into some inefficiency, and we do not want that. So yeah, that was great question about the Army. Love getting questions like that. Anything you'd like to ask, just fire away. So, because really this is where you're really laying the foundation. Thankfully, this is kind of the last, and really with these, it's probably the only really tedious step to painting these suits is undercoating this black. But it's so important for the overall composition of the model. You just can't, there's just no other way to do it. You just have to get in there with the brush and just paint it. If you don't do it, you don't get that nice definition of the panels, which really defines Tau. And then the edge highlighting, I think for like normal people, would count as a very tedious step. Most people don't enjoy edge highlighting, but I'm kind of a freak, so I love edge highlighting. I think it's like calming and really, it's kind of like a Zen exercise. Like it really just chills me out. I really like it. It's one of my favorite stages of miniature painting is the edge highlighting stage. And you're also really seeing part of why I like edge highlighting is you're really seeing that work that you put in up front with the airbrush and like this defining defining panels, defining shapes. The edge highlight's just going to take that and just kind of finalize that for you on the model. And it's just super rewarding. It's just a really rewarding step to see it all kind of come together. And then once you do the edge highlighting and the oil wash, man, then you're home free. Then it's just basing and painting that black rim, and you're home. You're done. Another one in the books. So I realize this isn't the most compelling segment I've ever done, but you know, part of doing Twitch is excuse me. Part of doing Twitch is, you know, kind of seeing how sausage is made. So, but if we get these bodies finished, then we'll move on. We'll go back to the heads, and we'll move on to. I can kind of speed up here a little bit. We'll move on to maybe doing the metallics. Try and get the metallics done, and maybe the lenses. If not, then you know, tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon, excuse me, I'll be back like 1 o'clock, 1:30. You can check the schedule, but tomorrow afternoon I'll be back and we'll be painting these suits. So I think in the morning I'm going to paint, I'm going to do another tutorial for the Patreon. And it'll probably be a basing. I might film 2 tomorrow, actually. I might do the basing tutorial for the verdant green basing that I put these tau on. Because that'll be a pretty quick one. That's a pretty straightforward tutorial. And then I might do part 2 of the Custodes, or part 3 of the Ultramarine tutorial. We'll see. Custodes is tempting just because I love painting Custodes. And tomorrow would be doing like the undersuit and the leather. And doing the leather is a lot of fun. I love painting that leather just because it's so much work with texture and it's not exact and it's messy. So it's just a fun technique to do. And there's so few elements on Custodes that are like that. A lot of them, most of them are so polished or clean or that the leather really has an opportunity to stand out as that kind of natural texture against all that bling. So that's always just a really fun step to do when painting Custodes. But we'll see how I feel in the morning. See what I feel like painting. But I will be painting these tau at some point tomorrow. I can guarantee you that. Because my goal is to get these done this week and back to the client. So my friend Brian, who's been a wonderful client over the years, this is the last of the current tau that I have for him, and then I actually sold him my Adeptus Mechanicus army last year, and he commissioned me to paint up some stuff for that army. So over the next couple months, I'll be painting a bunch of AdMech as well in my custom Forgeworld Ludi scheme. From Scutari Ludi. It's the banner on my Patreon page with the blue excuse me, the blue Scutari and the magenta OSL. So it'd be great to revisit. It'd be great to revisit that scheme. I'll be doing some really cool models for that army. I'm doing a bunch of dragoons and iron striders, dune crawl, maybe not dune crawlers, castle and robots, Belisarius Call, Knight Castellan, Knight Valiant. So really, really, really cool. Really cool models for those, and of course some rangers and some priests and stuff, just a few here and there, but a lot of those really cool centerpiece style models for that AdMech army over the next couple of months. So stay tuned for those if you like big stompy robots, and who doesn't like big stompy robots? So those are gonna be awesome. I'm really looking forward to that. He's gonna send those to me pretty soon, so I can get those prepped and get them in the schedule, get them in the queue. And I'll probably do, a little bit here and a little bit there. One of the things I'm determined to do with this Twitch stream, and also by association the Patreon, is I really want to make sure that there's varied content. So I'm doing fewer army projects as far as commissions go, but I do still have a couple army projects in the project queue, so I want to sprinkle them in and kind of alternate with other smaller projects over time. So I got a big Space Wolf army that I've been working on, but I don't want you guys to tune in, for a month straight and watch me paint Space Wolves. I mean, it's just not compelling programming. So, I'll be alternating, and once I've painted a good amount of something, I may just paint it off stream, or who knows? We'll find out. This is day one, so I am open to suggestions, open to constructive criticism. I'm learning. I really wasn't a big Twitch guy. I've been watching Twitch streams. I mean, I watch tournament coverage or something, battle reports, podcasts. I have Twitch, but for me, I've always, just been a little bit more, I've watched some YouTube videos mostly, but I really haven't been a big Twitch guy, so I don't know what the specific, like culturally, I don't know what the platform expectations are, or I don't know what the audience's expectations are. So I'm gonna just keep doing what I think is helpful, useful, cool, fun, relaxed, and then we'll see how people respond. Apparently, people think I'm crazy for streaming as much as I've scheduled, but if I'm going to be sitting here painting anyway, be cool to hang out and share that. Man, I might have to take some vocal lessons or something. My voice is a little tired. I am willing to admit. Like 5 hours of talking on, and that's just on stream. I have a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old, so that'll do a number on anybody's vocal cords throughout the day as well. They're great kids. They do love to chat, so I'm very fortunate. But man, today's been great. I've had a lot of fun painting on Twitch. Trying to figure out this new adventure, trying to figure out these new platforms and how to deliver hopefully really good value to my patrons and get some followers on Twitch and whatnot and see where this journey takes us. One thing I do know is there's never going to be a shortage of material from Games Workshop. They just keep knocking it out of the park with these releases. It's insane. Almost done. Almost done with the black. Like Aeronautica Imperialis looks really cool. I'm trying to remember if I played Aeronautica Imperialis back in the day. I don't know that I did, but Epic was my jam. Epic was like my number one game when I was a kid. And so Titanicus really had me gripping. But again, like nobody, I don't know anybody that plays up here. And it's just one more thing. Whenever I sit down and I paint stuff for my 40K army. So it's hard for me to do other systems. But my buddy Eric from Variance Hammer blog, which if you haven't checked out, you should go check out because he has a really interesting perspective on 30K 30K and 40K, but he is God, he's gonna kill me. He studies like disease vectors. Yeah, I think he's a professor, and he teaches. I'm pretty sure he teaches about disease vectors, and which I don't know like the official name for. Eric's gonna kill me. I'm gonna have to double check with him, but he does a lot of really cool work with statistics. So, and he did a like statistical analysis of like a starship battle in one of the most recent, I think in Solar War. There was a big void war, and he did like a statistical analysis of like how long the Imperial fleet could hold out or something insane. Dude, if Epic came back, it's like it's all over. I mean, it's interesting how many rules they integrated into Apocalypse from Epic. I love painting models at that scale. I'm like obsessed with painting models at that scale. So Eric, bless his heart, he is picking up Aeronautica Imperialis because, like me, he's a Epic scale enthusiast, and he's going to paint up the Imperial side, but he does not want to paint the Orc side, but he wants to get the Orc side painted. So he's going to send me off the 4 or 5, I think it's 5 planes from the starter box for Aeronautica Imperialis. And so I'm going to paint up some Orc Dakajets, and that's going to be awesome. I'm definitely going to do that. Definitely going to do that on stream because that's just going to be fun. So I'm really looking forward to that. But But yeah, dude, those Sisters of Battle, just that range is going to be. It might even end up being like the gold standard for army ranges in 40K. I mean, every single sculpt that we've seen, every face, everything just has so much character to it that it's really, that's a labor of love. That's a labor of love army right there. There's no. That's one of those armies where it'll probably be all right to get. It won't be too bad to get to. It won't be too much pain to get to a good standard. Like if you want just like a good looking Sisters of Battle army, it probably won't be too much work. I mean, it will, but any fully painted army is a lot of work. But that looks like for sure one of those armies where if you wanted to spend 20 hours on every infantry model in that army, you could easily get lost in the detail and character of every single individual model in that army, which could be a lot of fun, honestly. Yeah, I don't see myself playing Sisters. I could see myself, if again I play Chaos, so dipping your toe in the Imperial end of the pool is an extremely slippery slope. But I could see myself having like a little battalion of Sisters or something like that, if alongside other Imperial elements. But I'll for sure be painting some for the Patreon and doing tutorials for like the different orders and stuff like that. That's something I really want to do. I'd love to have a catalog of like 3 or 4 main paint schemes for each faction, just like a quick 3 or 4 part tutorial on how to get a really nice above tabletop, a really nice standard painted example of like the 3 or 4 main orders for Sisters, or a bunch of Space Marine chapters, or here's how you paint Cadians, or whatever it is. I mean, the Necron dynasties, or I think it'd be really cool to kind of build a library of that for people to have, like, order the Bloodied Rose. How do I do that? Oh, okay. So I think that'd be really neat. Long term, that's something I'd love to do, but we'll see how practical it is. But never know. Could be very cool. So, sorry, just checking in real quick. All right. So let's start in on some of these metallics. And for metallics, I don't really enjoy. Let me get over here. I don't really enjoy the wet palette. These are like, 10 for $1 at the art store. Just little plastic palettes. And I love them. These things are awesome. I think I've had these for like 3 years. But I love them because you can just take your fingernail when it comes time to. Yes, I do clean these. When it comes time to clean these, you can just take your fingernail and like whoop. The paint just comes right off them. So it's kind of therapeutic. And you can also like wash them and scrub them with a sponge and stuff like that. But boom. Clean, ready to go. Perfect. Easy peasy. So cheap, reusable, perfection. And for the base coat on the metallics, we're doing a brass, like you can see on this crisis suit. We're gonna do that brass. So I also want to show, like, this is a crisis suit after I already did the oil wash, and you can see what a difference that oil wash makes. The crisis suit was painted the exact same way as this XV9. So it's really, that's why we went so high on the highlights, is because that oil wash is gonna flatten out a lot of that. So something to keep in mind. But you can see on this, we're doing that like really nice warm brass on the metallics, just to keep it in tone with the yellow and not jump out too much. Oh man, yeah, that Sister Amelia looks amazing. The Canoness that they got at Nova is insane. I'm hoping somebody wants to get some sisters painted, and I really it'd be interesting to see if I can integrate it into my plans. And I'm dying to see like their vehicles and stuff. I know they released they showed the Penitent engine, but I think that's it as far as the reveals for their vehicles, and they've redone all their vehicles too. Who knows if they have new units? That would be sweet. So that reveal is going to be just off the charts. So for this metallic, we're going back to one of my favorite colors in the whole world, Tinny Tin. This is Vallejo Game Color. This is basically Tin Bits, R.I.P. Tin Bits, which was one of the greatest colors in history. Tin Bits is right up there with like Chestnut Ink as all-time colors. So Game Color Tinny Tin is basically the same color. Just a really nice. It's a little bit lighter than the old Tin Bits. It's not as purple as the old Tin Bits was. Who is it? I wish my memory was better. There's a company that I follow on Instagram. There's a paint company that's doing a nostalgia range of paints. It's called Nostalgia 88, I think. And they're going in the Wayback Machine to recreate the white top, the cylinder white top Citadel colors, like Tentacle Pink and Tin Bits, Chainmail Silver. I mean, the whole all-star team of original Citadel colors, and it makes me yearn for just ordering up a set of those things just to play with. I have the anniversary Noise Marine for Chaos that they released. Was that earlier this year? And I would love to get my hands on that nostalgia paint range, and then paint that new sculpt of the old, the kind of reimagining of the Noise Marine, but just using the Nostalgia 88 range of paints. I think that would be a really cool little one-off project, and just have fun with it. Because really, one of the things I love about that Chaos Marine is you can mess around as much as you want. You can create anything you want and it would make sense for that model. So we're just base coating this in tin bits, and then we'll do. So we're for sure doing that. We're for sure doing those. We're for sure doing in there. I kind of want to do this knob, the kneecap there, and I kind of don't. And I think I'm going to leave these little knobs alone, but I kind of want to do that kneecap. No. Because I think that'll help. Yep. I don't spend too much time thinking about it. Yeah, that Noise Marine's cool. I have, I'm hoping, with Psychic Awakening that they'll go back and give some love to specific Chaos Legions like they did, like the Space Marine supplements. I think that would be really cool. So I have those Berserkers that I was talking about. And then for Noise Marines, what I want to do is I want to get some of the 30K Emperor's Children Cacophony and use their like torsos and weapons, but put them on either intercessor bodies or aggressor bodies, or maybe not aggressors, or reaver bodies, and just to kind of bulk them up and scale them up a little bit, because really 30K Marines are small, and make Noise Marines out of those Cacophony, because those things are just super cool. And then just have hoses and pelts and skin and everything just hanging off the armor. I think that would make a really, really cool squad. And then do them with like a white armor and with purple or magenta kind of detailing or panels, but to do like a primarily white body, torso, and then do some like blood and mud and filth just kind of splattered on like the legs and stuff, where they kind of have that hint towards that purity with the white armor, but it's abundantly clear that they're anything but just covered in viscera and filth, and loving every second of it. I think that'd be a really cool squad to do. And the nice thing is I wouldn't really have to do Hey, thanks so much, man. It was good. Thanks for hanging out. Have a good night. We'll see you again soon, I hope. Thanks again for the support on Patreon. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me, and it enables me to, keep going, keep pushing on. And I've just been really humbled by the response to the Patreon so far. So thank you. And I'll keep, as you can tell, I have a lot of ideas, I have a lot of plans. So I'm going to put as many of these plans into action You still have a pot of tin? Oh wow, I'm jealous. Guard that thing. I saw a posting on, I think it was in Barter Bucket maybe like a year ago, that they had like one of those original little paint boxes of Citadel, and it was the hex, the hard plastic hex, and it had like all the original inks, including chestnut ink and a couple others, and it was like $200 from like Denmark, or some, plus shipping from like Denmark or something, and I was not in a position to pull the trigger, but I was like strongly considering, like, man, that would be, because they were like mint, like, and they'd just been sitting in this box for like 30 years. But that would have just been a really cool set to have, but maybe one day. But yeah, the tin bits, I love how much purple there is in that. I love how it breaks. It's such a great color. And this tinny tin is close. It's certainly close enough to do a nice little quick brass, but that tin bits was just liquid gold, man, that thing. I mean, while GW's on this nostalgia train with armies, if they released that nostalgia paint line, they would print money. Because but I think they either sold all the original paint recipe rights, or they never owned them in the first place. And the paint recipes are owned by the original manufacturer of their paint line, which is Reaper? No, it's not Reaper. It's God, what is it? I'm gonna remember like 5 minutes after I log off. I just know it. It's not Andrea. Is it Andrea? No. I don't remember. But I'm gonna have to find the name of that company that's doing the Nostalgia 88 line, and I'll put a link in the comments or something, because it's super cool. Like it's such a cool project. It makes me so happy that somebody in the world is excuse me. It makes me really, really happy that somebody in the world is doing that project and bringing those paints back to life, because they are so cool. Kids these days don't even know how good they have it. And then now with contrast paints, shoot. That's I want to play with those some too. I think it's great. Anything that gets more painted armies on the table, I'm all a fan of. And I've seen some people, like James Wapple's been doing insane stuff with contrast paints, but I'm pretty sure that guy's like an actual wizard and is not actually human. I'm pretty sure he could go into my kitchen and like crush stuff into pigments and make some incredible looking miniatures out of it. I mean, that guy is just insane. Andy Wardle's been doing really cool things with contrast, Richard Gray, and there are a lot of really good painters that have been getting some great results with contrast paint. I just haven't had much of an opportunity to play with them and experiment with them, so it might be something down the road that I can mess around with. So Space coats. This is good. This is actually, I'm pretty happy with this progress. I wasn't expecting to get necessarily this far, but one thing I've noticed about painting on stream, it does keep me more focused on painting. I'm not like checking my phone and or I'm not watching something in the background that catches my attention. Like I'm just making sure that I'm painting and talking. Usually my wife and we'll sit and we'll listen to podcasts and stuff, and we talk and show each other funny memes and stuff. So being on stream actually really like, oh, I gotta stay focused, gotta keep making content, gotta stay on topic, stay on target. Which I think is a little more laid back than all that, but it does keep me focused and keep me painting. So we're, for being 5 hours into these guys, we're looking pretty good. We're gonna finish off these base coats, and there we go. Maybe finish the metallics or just finish the base coats. Then maybe work on it a little bit tomorrow morning before I stream in the afternoon. Maybe just, I don't know. We'll see what tomorrow brings. It's a new day. So we're almost done with I do want to get the bases painted for these towel though. Usually that's the first thing. It's usually the first thing I'll do. The first thing I'll do when I start on a new batch, like these Tau or the Space Wolf army that I'm working on has a bunch of runic bases from Secret Weapon Miniatures, which are really, really cool. They're really nice bases that then I almost completely cover up with snow. But I'll finish painting the bases for whatever batch before I even do base coats on the batch itself. Because when I finish painting a model for a squad, I want to just pop it off the base that I'm painting it on, and then stick it on the base that it's going to be on, and finish it. I don't like having painted models sitting around waiting for basing because they're just so close to being done that it's like torture. Just having models sitting there like, hey, we're almost done. Why don't you do those bases? Like I have these dozen crisis suits in Pathfinder team right now. It's driving me crazy. So the wash that I use on brass and I'll use on some gold is a little custom wash I did. I got kind of the base recipe from Dave Taylor did a brass tutorial a long time ago on his blog when he was painting his Mechanicum army, which it's a lot of brass. And this is a really cool wash. It's 2 parts of P3 brown ink, 1 part of Secret Weapon Miniatures Amethyst, and 1 part of Nuln Oil. So it's got that kind of brown, purple, black and it's just a really useful It's a really useful ink. It is definitely, because of that brown ink, it is definitely more opaque than like a shade would be. It's still transparent, but it definitely influences. It definitely influences the paint. The Nuln Oil gives it that nice matte finish. So it's not just like throwing a shade, throwing some Druchii Violet or something over this. This is darkening that metallic, and then it's going to make it more matte because of the Nuln Oil, and that purple is going to bring out some of the purple tone that I long for in the tin bits. This is going to inject some of that. Like you can't, maybe on this bigger area you'll be able to see the kind of color change there. Like you can see how warm, just how warm that gets with that purple. Because even the P3 brown ink is a very red brown ink. It's not a kind of sepia, or not sepia, that's not the word I'm looking for. It's not a black brown ink. It is definitely a red brown ink. So that actually helps us with this brass, because we want that kind of rosy tone. We want that warm red tone in the metallic, and then that works with works with the warm yellow, and then offsets the cold blue in the armor, so just gives a nice contrast to the whole model. And so we're just going to go through and do a wash on the whole thing. This isn't targeted. We do want to make sure that we are getting a little bit on the edges to kind of establish that line between the metallic bit and the armor, because in some places, especially like on the side back here, it's not that well defined on the model itself. So we do want to get some of that delineation between where the metallic element is and where the armor is, but we're also going to get that from the oil wash. When we do the oil wash, that's gonna do the same thing. So it's not as critical. We still want to do it, but it's not as critical as it would be on a model like, you know, space, like my Ultramarine tutorial on the Patreon. We're kind of doing the same thing for the shoulder pad trim that we're painting gold, but we're not oil washing that model, so we want that wash to really establish that line between those two elements. So sometimes it's more important than other times. It depends on what's coming after. It's why they're like, try not to have like hard and fast, you know, rules about any of this. It really depends on where it is in the order of operations, what's coming next, what do you want the end result to be, will depend on how you're going to define that area, because there are a lot of different ways to do that. So it's one of those like least helpful answers. Well, what do I do? You know, like, well, it depends. It really just depends on what you want to do. So always asking like what What do I want the end result to be? I want that to be defined. Okay, how is that going to get defined? Oh, it's going to get defined by the oil wash. Cool, so I don't need to worry about this, pin wash, this brass wash, nearly as much as making sure that when I do the oil wash, that I get that definition. So, now we've done the wash. This wash also dries out pretty quick. So we've done that wash, and now we're going to go back and use Game Color Brassy Brass, some Tinny Tin and Brassy Brass, some really fun paint names. I love when companies try and come up with unique and fun paint names. And then we're just like the top half. And then we are going to hit just a little past that. Here we go. A little past the horizontal break in the middle of the. But we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're not going back over, because the light is going to hit that top half, and it is going to hit that lip on the bottom half, but it's not really going to travel. It's not really going to travel past that. So again, it's going to hit that top half, and then it's going to hit the lip on the bottom half, but the light is not going to travel. Like if you're doing it on a curved surface, the light's not going to travel under the curve. So it's going to hit that top part, and it's going to hit the lip on that bottom part, and then it's going to pretty much stop. So we're going to stop and leave that bottom part like completely in shadow. And that's going to give us a really nice definition of that circular shape you can see there. Boom. Perfect. I think we're going to highlight these. I think we're going to highlight the brass, and then I think we're going to be done. And again, so this same thing, we don't want to go back down under the front. We want to leave that in kind of a more extreme light, because again, we are going to end up putting varnish on this. We're going to end up oil washing it, so that's going to end up dulling that down quite a bit. But we want to see how it's nice and shiny, and there's a little bit of shadow at the bottom. That's great. That's what we want. So inside that leg, if you can't really see that, that's recessed in there. Let me see if I can get a little more light in there. There we go. That's recessed into the leg. You can kind of see it there. You'll see it better after we edge highlight that. We're really just hitting the middle on either side of that horizontal break, and that's it. Same here, top, and then this is big and pretty flat, so we're going to keep highlighting down just a little bit. But again, we're keeping with the overall shading of this back area, so we're not going back in here to highlight. We're staying kind of past these vents here to highlight. So top part here, a little bit onto that bottom edge, just the middle on this one, on this recessed area, and we are highlighted. So highlight here, highlight here, highlight here. And this is good. We have a pretty good pace going on these guys. As with any commission, you want to be mindful of the time, but you do want to make sure that you're keeping your standards up, and that you're keeping the pieces up to the standard that you've painted this army to You know, like I said, Brian's a great player, and he's taken this army to some big events. I've been fortunate to watch this army on Games Workshop's Twitch stream. It's been featured on their channel at what was it? Was it Nova? Was it Nova last year? It might have been Nova last year. So that was really, really cool to see. To see my army, not my army, Brian's army, with the army I painted on Games Workshop's official Twitch was really cool. So as I travel to more events, my goal would be to get my personal army that I painted onto the stream. That would be really cool. Goals, you know. So one day, but that's awesome. I was really happy for. Maybe it was at LVO. I think it was at LVO last year. Really happy for Brian. Really glad that he continues to ask me to paint models for him because it's a lot of fun. It's a great scheme. So. And I'll never pay it. I would never paint these for myself. That's actually one of the things I like about doing commissions. I would never ever paint a Tau army for myself ever. So this gives me a really cool opportunity to paint a bunch of really cool models for a good friend. So okay. So today, over the course of 2 Twitch streams, in about 5 hours minus, that's not counting any prep, cleaning, priming, anything. We've gone from primer to all the airbrush base coats are done on the yellow and the gray. The black is all blocked out on the suits and the heads, and we are well on our way to finishing the bodies and the heads. Metallic elements are done on both of those. So really all that's left on the heads is the lenses and the edge highlighting. And then on the suits, I think it's just edge highlighting the black and edge highlighting the suits themselves, and those will be done. And then on the weapons is a little bit more because we really haven't done anything with them other than the airbrush base coat. But that is really, really, really good progress for 5+ hours, 5-ish hours of work. To be this far is really encouraging. I'd say we're not even halfway there. Edge highlighting does take a while, and blocking out the different elements on this gun we're gonna have to be really careful with that. So that being said, I'm really happy with the progress so far, and really looking forward to getting these done. I think I'm gonna do the bases tomorrow morning. So when I do finish these, they'll be ready to pop on the bases and call it a day and call it a project. So thank you to everybody who tuned in and watched the stream today, my first day on Twitch. Really humbled by all the support. Glad that you think this is interesting and something you want to be a part of. Really, really cool. So I will be putting these up on YouTube if you didn't get a chance to catch it. I know Twitch archives them for a while, but I want them to be available to as many people as possible. So, give me a follow, here, or subscribe to the YouTube channel, and of course check out my Patreon, where I have a lot more in-depth kind of tutorials, or not in-depth, but more focused and succinct tutorials, and I'll be putting out a bunch of content on there, most of which will end up on YouTube at some point, but there's a lot of stuff that's going on there that won't be on YouTube. So go check it out, patreon.com/legalizemischief. It's only $6 for access to everything that I produce for the channel. So I think it's a great value. There's already, I think, 5 or 6 videos up there, and in the first few days. So go check it out. And any constructive criticism or encouragement or anything, just leave me a comment, shoot me a message. Just appreciate it. Really thankful, and look forward to painting with you again soon. Thanks so much.